I decided to do an animated graphic ahead of time just to give people a better idea of where we're going. Let's see. These are the flowers that the planets create as they rotate around the sun. This is Mercury. This is from the point of view of the Earth. I'm trying to think, I'm going to have to reduce this to make it, no, I don't have to reduce it. I click on the screen, that's what I do. No, it doesn't do that either. Yeah, it works differently with, evidently I don't have enough memory to do it in this system. At any rate, I think this is clear enough. This is the a geocentric orbit of Mercury around the Earth. It creates flower-like patterns. It seems like to be this an earlier version, but at any rate.
Is that an annual orbit?
Yes. No, it's not. I'm sorry. It's a just continuous orbit. Let's see. This is where I am now. I'm sorry. Well, yeah. From the point of view of the sun, you get the geometrical forms that I have in the handout. So Mercury in, this is less than a year. In a year, it will make, I'm going to have to, let's see, go to the next one, do this manually. I'm sorry. In a year, it makes 6, this is actually 9, half of a cycle of what I use are 18 points before birth. These are the 18 points that complete a sort of a full cycle as it's moving geocentrically around the Earth. I had a version that had the heliocentric positions, or the points, the planetary cycles from the point of view of the sun, which are those geometric forms. So I hope that'll become clear in the next slideshow. I'll just go through these to give an idea. This is Venus. I couldn't find software, and so I had to turn off all the lights late at night in my office and use my camera to photograph the screen. So I've just given up. I just could do what works. And this is Mars. Unfortunately, it moves rather quickly. I thought this usually stops when I click on the screen, unfortunately. There we go. So you can see here, there are the 8 points of the Mars heliocosm, what I call the heliocosm. In the helios, from the point of view of the sun, this will be a geometric form that's much more irregular than what you see here, this beautiful flower. Jupiter forms 12 points from the point of view of the Earth. This is not, again, not from this point of view of the sun. But this, these are the 12 points that I'll put in the chart before, the 12 points before birth, 12 years before birth, basically. Let's see. I think it's better if these are animated. And this is Saturn. As we see, the sun seems to be retreating further and further. We have to visualize the sun as carrying all the planets with it and moving north toward the star Vega. up the Orion arm and towards the center of the galaxy, about 15 degrees from the center of the galaxy, one of the centers of the galaxy, from about 26 Sag, if I recall, to 1 Capricorn.
How many were in the Saturn? How many?
29.
29.
Yeah, 29. It's basically, oh, here it is again, yes. Let's see.
About the same number of years of a Saturn cycle.
Exactly, yeah. This is the trigon, the grand trigon of Jupiter and Saturn conjunctions. You see those inner planets moving rather rapidly. Each conjunction or loop there is 20 years apart from each other. And you can see it travels all the way around. Let me do this once more, but this is sort of interesting, I guess. We're following Saturn as it goes around. It goes all the way around on the outside. So it has a retrograde position movement. It appears as it's moving backwards. This is Jupiter-Uranus. I thought I should put it up here. There are many of these combinations, but this forms a six-sided figure, which relates it to a number of other planets. So I think this is what I would call a geocosm, along with Trigon is a geocosm, because it's two planets. It's not related to the Earth at the center or to the Sun at the center. It's two planets related to each other. So they create a harmonic of their own, and eventually I think if you have a Uranus-Jupiter aspect in your chart, say, you could have a table of the Uranus and Jupiter positions, conjunctions and oppositions is pretty much all I use. And I would suggest people use that for a 100-year span to see what occurs during those. They're basically transits, but it's another way of looking at transits. Let's see. No, I thought this would be easier. Nope, it's not what I'm looking for. Here we are. Oh, here we go. I have too many directories, I'm sorry. Oh, and this is the old version too. I'm sorry, I'm just not interested in the old version. Let me see. So basically, here we go. Here's a nice picture of the long body of the solar system. This is something that Rodney Collin put together years ago. And it shows the path of the sun north towards the star Vega. And it shows all the planets spiraling, and here's Pluto's elliptic orbit, basically a 250-year cycle going up to the top. We're basically on what's a little sub-galaxy on the Orion arm at an 18-degree angle. And it has its own rotational factors as well as our sun does. Our sun, at first people were saying that our sun moves north and south above and below the galactic plane in 9 and 18 million years. But actually it's a spiral. So our sun is spiraling, but since we're part of a Sirian system, along with Regulus and probably a number of other stars. We're moving all together as a system. And this is just one of the 7 clusters in this, in our local system in the Gould Belt. Pleiades is another, the Beehive cluster, and various others. That's just the logo. This is a picture that I've drawn to try and illustrate the lotus of a human life, starting at year 0, and going to age 84 to the length of an orbit of Uranus. I think it's sort of an interesting reference point. And I wanted to create a picture that enabled me and perhaps others to be able to visualize how we exist in time and space, how we move along with the planets and the sun, how we move as generations.
Have you taken the Uranian energy from the Manasic permanent atom as a creation of the lotus, or not? Or in which respect, in which context?
Just that it's close to the human lifespan.
Yeah, but why Uranus?
Why Uranus? Just because it's 84 years.
Oh, I see.
That's all. And here it becomes more clear for year 0 here with our sun and our chart. Every 20 years we have a trigon cycle. They occur at different times in our life, of course. If you're born with a trigon, then you're at year 0. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and approach 6 by the end of your life, if you were born with one. And basically everyone goes through 5 or 6 at just different periods in their life. This is, say, just a picture of a human being in a 250-year Pluto cycle or orbit. I'm not sure if I can, well, I guess, yeah, this will be the best it is. It'll cut the top off, but it doesn't matter.
Peter, when you say trigon, would you define that for us?
The trigon is the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. It was used by Arabic astronomers and historians to study history, to study cycles of warfare, rise and fall of civilizations. Ibn Khaldun, I think, was one of the writers who used that. The trigon is a nice 20-year period. It's Jupiter and Saturn conjunct every 20 years. And every 60 years it forms a triangle. So I represent it by a triangle. This is just a conjunction, actually. 3 of these would form the actual triangle, 3 conjunctions. It's very useful because it's close to a generational age, a generational period in a way. It's not a decade view of humanity, but more of a generational, and particularly in previous centuries where life was much shorter. And even now, the generations of humanity fall into these 20-year cycles.
Has this a relation to the star of the Bethlehem in any way?
Oh yeah, well that happened in 6 BC. Exactly. I think it's important to look at. Well, I have 4,000 years of them, actually 10,000 now, and trying to match them with historical events, or see what was going on then. But this gives I think it's sort of an interesting graphic, just that it gives you a flame-like pattern. It's just something I scribbled out. I didn't have time to get the graphics together. I just don't have the capacity or the help. So I tried to create these sepals underneath the lotus just to suggest these are influences coming from before birth. We are not born in 1 or 2 dimensions. We are fourth and fifth dimensional creatures. So we, like nations, Nations have a mental or personality cycle of 250 years. That's what I hypothesized in the book, Destiny of the Nations Revisited. But it seems to work for at least the countries that I've covered so far. In that book, I covered England, France, and Poland. They had golden age periods of these 250-year cycles. They also, with the Uranus repeats, they have periods of history where there are events that are part of the national mythology. But this is only if you look at Uranus in the sign that DK gives as the nation's personality or soul. So for the United States, you look for Uranus in Gemini or Aquarius. And those are massive events. Pluto into the revolution, and when we were formed over a 60-year period, I'd say, a condensed 20-year period between the revolution and the Constitution. And all the period before that, when Franklin was setting up the plan of union with Britain, which was rejected by Britain. All of this falls into a 60-year period for the birth of a nation. Pluto was in Gemini, in Aquarius most of the time, Uranus in Gemini. And that's in the book, the USA Archive of Charts, that I put together a couple of years ago. But Neptune, I think, is more vague. Well, it's more vague, at least for me, grappling with it. But it seems to be religious in nature, aspirational in nature, and I hope to pursue it a little more closely. At any rate, let's move on to the next, the long body.
Why does he stop at 250 years?
Oh, he doesn't. This goes on forever. It's basically, I think, a spirilla of the solar atom. This next chart, I put the solar atom at the top, or the planetary atom, actually. Well, this is the solar atom, I'm sorry, of course, and it's moving north. And this is one spirilla of what I would call the Sirian system of 7 stars, 7 solar systems. Sirius being the head center, our sun being the heart center, and hypothesized Regulus as the throat. But that's just iffy. I'm putting these two together just to give a cosmic view and also this human view. We're just this little portion of time in this huge thread soul of the sun. Here I put it in the center of the chart, and it's just a graphic, not one I'm not particularly pleased with, but I'll have to reduce the screen on this, I think. I was going through the census and the census documents and whatnot, and I found this interesting document of the population of the United States in 2000 and 2010. In dark gray and light gray, and it bore strikingly resemblance to this sort of lotus form, or maybe a rosebud, something like this. And it goes up to 100 years in this chart. This goes up to 85. You can just extend it up there a bit more for 100, etc. But I thought it was an interesting correspondence. This just throws the long body of the solar system into the human constitution. Here is another census report. What's expected in 2050. These are 3 different census reports. It's not like the baby boom chart that you saw earlier, which has a sort of a bulge to it because of the war. This is just to illustrate that the chart has a deeper basis than just the instant of birth. These are the glyphs I use, and this is part of the handout. For the Mercury heliocosm, now this is from the point of view of the sun. it forms a six-pointed star. It's associated with the number 9 and also 18. I use 18 positions, which is 2 times 9. They seem to work quite well for most people. These, if I go beyond that, it doesn't seem to have much effect at all. But quite often it's this 18th and 19th position that you find very strong in people's charts for some reason. And it also is where the Mercury cycle tends to come back to its same degree in 18 of these conjunction cycles. Venus has an 8-year octatorous cycle. It's an 8-year cycle of retrograde conjunctions close to the Earth and direct conjunctions on the far side of the Earth. I mean, the far side of the Sun, sorry. So here, when it's closest to the Earth, say the orbit of the Earth is out here, we see the evening and morning star as it's going retrograde. The retrograde is here and the direct here. Those are the symbols I use. With Mars, it has a 2-year cycle basically, but I use 8 years for most people. This is just to symbolize those first eight oppositions and conjunctions. The black square is an opposition. It tends to produce crisis. Mars, the open square, is the conjunction, and it tends to indicate character, I believe. It indicates what you've worked on, what you're bringing into the life. Every 40 years, I'll go into this later. Well, yeah, I'll go into it further down here. These are the trigons. This is just put together, be able to match the pink graphic that I handed out. I'm using this for a Saturn return, and this is for the Saturn heliocosm, or a Saturn conjunct the Sun every year. Those I only use, I say, the 29 conjunctions in those charts that seem to merit it. I do add them to charts I'm seriously interested in. And Saturnian types, or people who seem to have great difficulties of various types, I'll add the Saturn positions. It's very time-consuming to scribble this in by hand. You know. Mars has a 40-year cycle. This is actually an inaccurate representation of it. I should take 2 of these points out, because you only have 38 conjunctions and oppositions, but you have a 40-and-a-half-year cycle. Every 40-and-a-half-year cycles, years, you have, if you had a Mars position, a character position in your chart, 40 years later, you have an opposition position at the same point, the same degree point. So to me, this means that you're, I'm going to grab some tea, excuse me. To me, this would mean that your character is undergoing test. Your Martian, your animal nature, your lower nature, and your ability to achieve in a worldly sense, and in a spiritual sense, fighting for spiritual values, is undergoing a test. If you have a conjunction cycle succeeding an opposition, then it would show what you had achieved. Had you been able to achieve a resolution of the crisis of this opposition position in your chart. I'll have an illustration of a chart actually later. Maybe I can find one here. So here, this is the full moon before our conference. I thought it would be useful because it's part of the full moon cycle. It's part of the preparation for the conference. It's extraordinary. It has Neptune rising for Mesa. Oh no, it's for Laurel Park, I'm sorry. It's for where I live. I meant to have, I have another one that, oh, that's right. I had no really good chart to put in these glyphs. But at any rate, you can see that Mars perihelion, the degree at which Mars reaches its closest position to the Sun is conjunct Neptune. Also, you have a Mars heliocosm conjunct Neptune. You have Mercury cycle or heliocosm conjunct Mercury, and a Jupiter conjunct Mercury. Yeah, it's a really great time, I think, and particularly on Mars and Neptune, if you ask me. Where did Mars go? Let's see. Yes, we had Venus on Mars, which is very nice. But where was that other perihelion? The Neptune perihelion is identical with the nodes, the lunar nodes, for this conference and for this full moon. The perihelion where Neptune is closest in its orbit, and the aphelion where it's farthest away. Also on that node is southern Mercury and are the Mercury north and south nodes. The north node on the south lunar node. So Mercury is basically saying, okay, south node, we're going to put you to use. I have a theory about the nodes. I really like to look at the south node as, it is your past, it's what you're overcoming. The north node is where you're headed. But it creates an arena of unbelievable opportunity. It attracts automatically to you all things that are connected to you karmically and as an arena of service. Forgive me if I'm staring at individuals, just one or two individuals, but it's helping me focus a bit too. It creates an arena where karma automatically or magnetically draws circumstances and people and all sorts of situations to you. You can use your north node in working with them and all of your spiritual aspirations, your spiritual goals, your spiritual, what the Buddhists call taming the sentient beings, taming us. We all need taming, particularly as Mars and Neptune creatures. But I thought that was sort of interesting. Mercury and Neptune. I find, I'm not quite sure what's involved here. Mercury and Neptune have a significant number of relationships, special relations, and I haven't quite figured it out. I think it may even be related to Ray 1 rather than Ray 2 in a very peculiar way. There's something to be examined there, at any rate. So that's just a sort of an example of how these glyphs can be put around the chart. I use Venus to indicate soul, energy. The Venus cycle on Jupiter is very favorable. Venus is on Mars, very nice. Venus on Saturn, or heliocentric Saturn, but still it's close to draw it in. On our Earth, we have the trigon, triple trigon of World War II. On the Sun, we have a Venus heliocosm, and that's right. On the Sun, Uranus conjunction, and Mercury conjunction. So it's, with all this energy, I don't know, I think everyone has sensed that we're all under pressure. The trip coming here was unbelievable in terms of the insanity that was going on everywhere. All the bus schedules and things, and the temptations to mutual assault. I couldn't believe what was going on. It was just astonishing. And then some very interesting people too. But anyway, let me go back and explain, oh yes, this other, actually, the 40-year cycle I think is useful, and that's in the Mars book that I put out last year. It's incomplete. I already want to revise it. I will. This is a human lifespan, basically with all of these cycles in a sort of an archetypical chart. These all occur, these cyclic, the Jupiter 12-year cycle occurs at different points in everyone's life. But this, I wanted to put this together to create a synopsis of what a human life is like lived in cycles, in the cycles available in an 84 or 100-year lifespan. So that's the purpose of the pink chart. Here we have 3-year cycle for Mercury. I just put a trigon at the base. That's just aesthetically. The 8-year cycle of Venus here. 12-year cycle of Jupiter here. The 16-year cycle of Mars here. There's 8, but I tend to use 10 of the oppositions and conjunctions. For some reason, the 10th in many, many charts, it may be because I'm just doing charts for spiritual students, but the 10th position, whether it's an opposition or conjunction, almost is always conjunct a planet in the person's chart. I'm thinking, what does this mean? 10, okay, it's the harmonic of Venus. It's the Venus harmonic in this Mars cycle somehow. It's very curious. I would love to have other people take a look at it and see if they find the same to be the case in the charts they do. Here's the first Saturn return, the second and the third. Here, just symbolically, is the 40-year cycle. It can occur anytime. If, let's see, here we go. Here's our life lotus, and here are the trigons, these green trigons before birth. Here's, there will be 29 positions of Saturn, and it goes this as far as this below the chart and before birth, 60 years for the trigon. If you do 16 years for Mars, this is where you end up. This is the 40-year return to position cycle of Mars. It's the Jupiter cycle where I put in 12 positions, the Venus cycle of putting in 10 positions, and the Mercury cycle, well, I'll put in 18, generally. It is amazing, actually, when you do work with Mercury, it's the most time-consuming, 18 positions, you know, comparing it to a table, scribbling out this glyph. Well, it turns out that most people don't have very many Mercury positions conjunct, you know, 1 degree of orb away from their planets. It's not that common. It's curious that way. So I don't worry about it so much as I used to. But Mercury is going to be my next project, for sure. Here's another just glyph. I should expand on this. This shows basically the same lifespan, and these are for the full moon chart. This is actually the full moon's chart itself. I mean, for here, and not for my little dinky town in western Massachusetts. Here's where you find Mercury, the cycle of Mercury. I put all points in, and then I highlighted only the ones that were active. I actually meant to expand on that. Here's the Venus cycle, the Mars cycle, the Jupiter cycle. Saturn is put in as separate glyphs here. I think I can find these and just pull them up on the screen. And here's the trigon.
Can I ask, do you
Yes.
watch closely your own chart in relation to these heliocosms?
Yes, very closely.
And what do you find in terms of their influence compared to normal transits and so forth?
I consider them soul influences, basically, because it's spiral cyclic energy.
Right.
And the heliocosms have the quality of being, they're both geocentric and heliocentric at the same time. So they unify the two systems of astrology, but also the two energies of Earth and Sun with a particular planet. So it solarizes these planets in a way, and I really think it's a soul influence.
Soul influence.
Yeah, definitely a
And
soul.
soul opportunity at those times?
Absolutely, and particularly with the Venus cycle.
Mm-hmm.
These can also be used as transits around the chart. I don't have that chart here. Let's see, I had one up earlier. I took it down. Let's see. You can basically take, okay, here's I write in the degrees of Venus's position, even if there's nothing there. Now, Venus is going to be moving backwards through the signs. So in this full moon's lifetime, in this person's lifetime, it'll hit the Earth and Moon. So you want to know around age 40 or 50 or something like this, when Venus, the 4-year Venus pulse, hits the Moon, which happens to be conjunct the Earth in this point. And it is conjunct the Earth in people who have full moon charts. But at any rate, I'll use Venus particularly that way. And as I said, with Mars, I'm most interested in Venus and Mars. Bailey has a quote saying that when scientists take a look at Mars and Venus, the planets too closest to the Earth, they'll come up with something interesting. I'm not saying that's what this is, but I'm saying it's a parallel. I look at Mars because I want to know what the challenges to character will be. And with Venus, you have the same thing, but it's more on a soul level, on a subtle level of the influence of Venus and how it evolves. With Jupiter, I'll look at, definitely look at all the, I basically have the astrological calendar, and I'll scribble in the Jupiter conjunction in the year, during the year. And on that day, I'll just watch closely what events, and I'll review it every 6 months or something like this for myself. I don't like to spend too much time, but I find it's quite useful. Jupiter, where Saturn is a ring pass knot that encloses and restricts and basically talks about your limitations. Jupiter is the ring pass knot of your radiation and your sphere of influence, your ability to include and radiate and include others, work with groups, work with interacting and various factors, situations, people. And so I look at Jupiter very closely as well. Those are the three. And traditionally, you know, Jupiter and Venus are very closely related to the soul and to the coming of the tawny flames of life from Venus when we were individualized. So that, to me, is important. Saturn, that would be very time-consuming. I always look at the trigon because quite often in people who have trigon conjunct their planets, they're like integrated personalities that are highly integrated. They will have an impact on their society in some way. And it's, you have to look at the chart to figure out how this is going to happen, but quite often it's very explicit. It's very sort of, I won't say cliche, it's what you might expect, thinking of success or effect or impact in the mundane sphere. In other cases, I just did a chart today where it's much more complex. The person is very Aquarian and a lot of third house aspects, and the ability to work and heal with people on very deep and on very deep levels that are difficult for most people to even look at is profound. The skill there is highly refined and profound. And what I thought of immediately was, there may not be a spiritual center, there may not be a situation, but there may be a set of places a person would go to as a base of operation to interact with people in this third house level, which is everyone on the street, everyone you meet during the day, everyone you work with, everyone that you're familiar with, your siblings and all the rest. So that's very fluid. And that was a challenging sort of assessment for me, trying to figure out why the trigons were so strong in that chart, or how they would manifest. And but anything is possible, and our lives change periodically. So circumstances change as well. I'm wondering if I can find these other charts, if I have a few moments to.
Yes, you do.
Okay.
Peter, mostly you draw these things in manually. Is there any way to program this?
I'd love to. I can't.
Have you talked to the solar fire people?
No, I haven't. No.
Well,
I should, I guess.
that's the kind of thing that they're looking for, progressive, new approaches. But the ones in Australia, I suppose.
Yeah, that's it.
I'd love to speak with Graham.
Graham is no
He-
longer.
No.
But Stephanie, his
Stephanie.
former wife,
Ah,
Yeah.
Stephanie, and she has a crew there. I think it's better than giving it to the American
yes,
group
yes, I think so too. Yes,
that basically kind of stole the program.
I know. I'm from Boston. I know the nameless characters who had unpleasant
Yeah.
experiences with yes.
But this would be so good because then
in
more
completely
people could
different
use it.
circumstances.
It's very laborious, very intensive to write all these things in.
This
But
is
if a
true.
program could be devised, I think it would get a lot more use.
I had problems because it didn't matter the time of the day, you had to get the sun up at the 10th house,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
there's no way of doing that in solar fire. You can,
Uh-huh.
yeah, so,
Well, something could be devised, I think.
yeah, and you're right, I'll write the people in Australia about it.
It'd be good if we could do this. I mean, Nicholas, you've suggested things for them to do, and
Okay.
they've done those things in terms of superimposition of charts. They didn't have that before. These suggestions were made.
Right, well, Graham was also married to Stephanie at the time,
But they're still progressing.
yeah.
Oh, I know what it's under. Let's see.
Let's say we have another 10 minutes, Peter.
Oh, thank you. Let's see.
Then we'll take a little break, and then Nicholas will present on a certain subject.
The Pleiades or something, right?
Oh,
The planet Neptune and sleep.
No, that's us.
Oh,
Well, to talk about the cosmic aspect, maybe I should just go through this. This is just to suggest where we are in the cosmos. I guess I can do it. This is basically the picture of a human being in a way. At the center of the galaxy is a black hole. In the center of our bodies is a sushumna in the chakra system. The sushumna is the physical counterpart of the sutratma, which unites all the periodical vehicles as well with the monad. And when you think about it, you think about Fohatana Shaktis and the discussion Bailey has about planetary life and how the egoic groups fit into the planetary life. I would suggest the empty. This ties in also with Buddhist emptiness teachings. This empty thread soul at the center is, in a way, a thread of Fohat, and around Fohat are the dancing Shaktis. Making patterns just like the planetary, the long body of the solar system. That's at a level, I think, where we're integrating with hierarchy or with Shambhala or with the larger constitution. But here I have the same old graph and that. Here's our, let's see. This is our Gould belt, I believe. Yes.
You are here.
The sun, yes, we are here. This is the Orion arm. The Gould belt is this very dim purple sort of orbit around here. I have my own pictures of this. Let's see. I don't know. Oops, I guess I didn't put that in. Well, this was in the book a while ago. Our solar system, the Sirian system. Our sun is, we'll say, Sirius in Cancer, the sign Cancer, the constellation Gemini, is the head of the Sirian system of 7 solar systems, ruled by Taurus Scorpio, by the way, and Mars. The sun is the heart, and one of these is the throat, and the rest these are suns that are close to the star Sirius. They're actually between, they're a set of stars between Ursa Major and the Pleiades are down here somewhere, but the next cluster, these are 7 cluster systems they're called moving clusters in astronomy. And they all fall on this Leo-Aquarius axis, which is interesting. Then you move towards Taurus-Scorpio axis, you get these 7 cluster systems between 17 association systems. There are basically H2 regions, called H2 regions, huge hydrogen clouds, association systems. Orion is sort of associated with one of them, but it is also a separate cluster that's being born. And it looks like 7 suns are coming out of that Orion system too. So there's a lot of questions to be asked. Anyway, these are the clouds on the Orion arm as they were depicted in. And here's the movement of the sun north and south across the galactic plane, taking 9 to 18 million years. I think how 250 million years divided by 18. Anyone can anyone do that quickly? It comes up with a significant number, which is interesting. Anyway, I can't recall it right now. But instead of the sun moving north and south over the galactic plane, actually it's spiraling. But if you see the sun is spiraling around, it's moving, its direction, general direction moving north. It's moving north, but we have the 25,000 year precession cycles to consider. We have the Milankovitch 50, 100,000 year ice age cycles. Then we have, when it comes to 9 million years, it takes to go through half a cycle. That's pretty small. But
It's close to 14.
yeah.
Close to 14 million years.
It's 13,
I've heard it's quite.
888, 888.888.888.
Oh,
13 million,
14.
888,888 with
So
lots of eights.
a dual 7
To
system.
infinity.
I thought that was quite amazing. Anyway, so these are all positions of the sun, but as it's spiraling around the general northward motion, it's taking all those different positions as it continues to move north. Here's the chart of the cosmic physical, where we're down here in the mental, basically the physical body of the planet. When the causal body of a planetary logos, which is on the 3rd subplane, the causal body of the solar logos is on the 1st or atomic subplane. The planetary logos, I'll say this is a planetary logos, and his causal body. When the planetary soul decides, or heavenly man, which is the term I would prefer to use, decides to become a mental, emotional, mental Manasaputra, divine Manasaputra, emotional entity, a planetary entity and a spirit of the planet. It incarnates on the monadic plane as a lesser heavenly man, DK says. And it incarnates mentally, emotionally, and physically through the Atmic, Buddhic, and mental planes. The mental planes where our causal bodies are found basically create his physical body. So I think I'm always led back to the image of the causal bodies or causal lotuses floating in a pool of water, and particularly in the case of egoic groups, a very peaceful pool that has gentle ripples, of resonance between the egoic lotuses in it over time, over millennia, I imagine. But here, I would associate the 7 rishis with 7 suns, are actually representatives of these 7 suns. This would be our 7 sun system, the Pleiades, another, the Big Dipper, another, the other chakras in the unknown logos, all up here. These are 7 cosmic logoi of 7 solar systems each, and these 7 systems are the physical nature of the cosmic logos, the unknown logos, not the cosmic logos, the unknown logos. So let's see. I just don't want to spend too much time here.
We're just about there.
Yeah.
We're just about there.
Okay, good. So this is just our sense of time. We're in the present, but the present is unknown as far as astronomy is concerned. We look at anything, the Andromeda galaxy at the present. If it's seen by us, it's actually over here because of the speed of light. Time is a succession of states of consciousness. This is the graphic I put together for the yellow Syrian 7 suns, Sirius. Our sun I put in the center of the solar precession circle. These are the cluster systems. I think it's Perseus that's closest after Ursa Major, which is north. It's moving north with the sun. Our Syrian system is moving north. All the rest of these clusters I've depicted as magenta. They're moving south in the direction of these crosses, all around Sirius, the star Sirius, at present. But Sirius actually, in 5 million years ago, was up here. Everything is in motion. So this is basically the idea of transience and the essential emptiness of our identity. Our identity is quite strong. Our aspiration and our goals and our work is very strong and real in one sense. There are many philosophical systems discussing it, but the jiva aspect in the center, I think, is empty and always connected to a higher entity. So I just put this in here to show the spiralic motion of Sirius, just this one star Sirius. This was done by a number of Danish astronomers. This was graphed out. So I don't know where all the other planets were. The clusters were probably in a relatively similar position, but that's it, I guess, for that. Yes, I think that's probably better than doing the charts I was going to do.
Well, we had our mind expanded. So we'll obviously study this intensively over the next year. Be ready for the next lecture next year. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.